Thank you so much, dear viewer, for tuning in. My name is John Gathuru, and here with me is a very renowned and respectable journalist, investigative journalist from Kenya. His name is John Allan Namu, though I know that he doesn't need introduction here because all of us know him or could be knowing him. Thank you so much.
No worries.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you are a very respectable and very renowned and very experienced, I would say, investigative journalist from Kenya and Africa. There are a few questions I would like to ask you.
Yeah.
And number one, first of all, being a journalist that has done a lot of great work, when did you know what exactly you wanted to do?
That's a good question. I think that was progressive for me. So I always knew at a certain point that, I didn't know coming into USIU that I'd be a journalist, but I did know I wanted to communicate, I wanted to travel, I wanted to do things that impacted people's lives. So my first choice was international relations. And then after about a semester or two, I switched to journalism as that program opened up. For personal reasons and also because I felt that the profession was intriguing. So on that score, I kind of knew, but I didn't know. When I got into the profession, I thought I wanted to be a news anchor only, but I felt compelled to go out and tell stories. And in that way, and with some very good chance meetings, I fell into investigative journalism, and that's where I've stayed for majority of my career.
Wow, that's amazing because it speaks a lot to people who are still in campus but still have not yet figured out what exactly they want to be.
Yeah.
So I think a key point here you're trying to say is, you were saying, is that some things are progressive.
Well, some things, yeah, you don't have to have everything figured out, especially today, man. Like, there's so much choice. It would be good if you are able to choose, right? Because that gives you more clarity earlier on. But I mean, look at. There's lots of examples of people who fell into professions that they're now flourishing at, and they did it much later than any one of you will possibly even have the experience of, right? Keep in mind also that people, on average, change their careers about 3-4 times in their lifetimes, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of space to change, to learn, to grow, and to experience. I don't think that you should put the pressure on yourself that you should be a certain person. What you should do is follow your value, your purpose, and I think that should be able to lead you to where you'd want to be eventually.
Wow. There are many people who go to campus.
Yes.
Now, one particular question, because I know that in campus, the people come to campus to get education. One thing I have really been curious to know is, did the career you had in campus, what you learned here in campus, did it, how much in percentage would you say campus education prepared you for what you're doing now?
Well, in terms of like education itself, right? What to do, what not to do. I'd say there are very few things that I carried from campus into my career. They're very important in terms of the foundation that they gave me. For instance, media ethics is one of the things that I felt, and the certain basics, right? But for me, campus university life is not really about the reading. It's about the discipline of being able to A, finish a task, but B, being able to express yourself in terms of your ideas, to really start to think, right, about the world around you and about the world as it relates to your career and your profession. Campus shouldn't be about just reading and drilling and A's and B's. It should be the time, or it should be part of the time where a person opens their mind, right, and starts to think or continues to think for themselves. Because you don't want a factory worker at the end of the process of being in campus. You don't want a person who's like that. You want a person who can think. You understand? A person who can think is 10 times more valuable than a person who knows how to do one job and do it well, because that person is only good for one thing in a sense, right? But a person who knows how to think, a person who appreciates the value in different disciplines, or at the very least is open to learning new things. Actually, that's a word. Campus should make you more teachable in terms of being able to learn more, think more. Yeah, so I'll leave it at that because it'll be a long winding up.
Yeah, you talk about the importance of being able to think.
Yes.
We have many campuses where students who are pursuing this course, journalism, feel that the institution does not give them the adequate training that they need for the industry. For example, you'll find that in campuses, for example, I heard in your speech that at the time you were here, there was only one camera.
Yes.
And you actually did your project only using one camera.
Yes.
There are many campuses, especially public institutions, where the students there have limited resources, don't have a TV station, don't have a radio station, and so they come from a school where they are packed with theory, but no practical training from the institution. What would you advise somebody who is going through such a situation whereby they feel I'm competing against job seekers who are coming from the best of institutions, where they have really
That's
good
a great
equipment?
question. And let's be frank, that system where universities can offer a degree and then not actually offer is just, it's a product of corruption that's really eating away at our society, right? Because that is a lie. You don't promise your parents that your son will become A and then offer them B, right?
Yeah.
So that needs to be said. But on the other hand, what the beauty about today is that there's been a flattening in terms of the amount of information that you can get even outside of a university, right? The example of Julius Yego is now trite. It's been used a lot, but it's an important one because that man conquered a sport by learning about it on YouTube. My point is that a university isn't the only place where you can learn. All right? It's not the only place, and we shouldn't be so close-minded to think that this is, if I come to USIU, I come to the Mecca of journalism, then I'll be the best. No. The best journalists are often the people who are more curious about the world around them, curious enough to go and find the information where it is and learn in the ways that they have available to them. That said, there is a massive problem with education in this country, a massive problem, because we're not being delivered what we've been promised, right? And that needs to be fixed. Yeah.
Wow. About now that you talk about being able to get education from other avenues, for example, YouTube, you have moved from being an employee
Yes.
to a media owner, though you don't like to be called that way.
Yes.
One question I have is, would you employ somebody who is curious and goes to chase information, to get the information, a person who has learned the necessary skills required in media on YouTube or from other avenues, for example, from the internet? Would you employ such a person?
Why not? Why not?
Uh-huh.
Right? I mean, you see, the one of the greatest lies that has been sold is that there's some inherent value of having a degree in the back of your pocket that will make you more valuable than the person next to you who has the knowledge that is needed but doesn't quite have that education. Look, degrees say one thing about you, right? They say that you had the discipline to start and finish something, or maybe you or your parents had the money to do it, right? But what does it say about a person who was curious enough to learn and conquer a skill by themselves, right? That they would be able to compete with people who have degrees, right? I'm not knocking traditional structured education, not infrastructure, it's the system, right? The system of education that we've adopted. I'm not knocking it in the sense that there isn't some inherent value. What I'm saying is that we need to be more creative in our thinking about education than to just say that if a person goes to standard, that they've attained this certain level of knowledge. That's not true, and it has never been true throughout the course of history. It hasn't, right? So, of course I would. And I have, right? There are people who've come and have CVs as long as I am told, right? But the people that we wound up hiring have something that I can say without a shadow of a doubt, right? Defies or transcends an education. The Dusit footage that we shot, majority was shot by a cameraman that I work with and have now worked with for a while. That guy has never seen the inside of a university. Right?
Wow, I mean, it's a great
But
thing.
he's one of the most talented cameramen in Kenya or in Africa. And I'll say that without a shadow of a doubt.
Wow.
Why? Because he is interested in what he's doing. It is the interest in what it is that you do that is going to get you further than the education that you have. There's so many universities today offering an education. Why isn't it that all of us have jobs? If that's,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Look, this is a much bigger question, a much bigger topic than just me hiring a person on that, because there are a lot of layers to this discussion.
Yeah, yeah.
But I wouldn't blink if I felt that a person was qualified.
That was so comforting coming from you as a media owner and for me as a student. Yeah, one thing I would really like to know, as an investigative journalist,
Yes.
I realized that you have to know much more than just journalism. I feel you have, because often at times we see you in the field with gadgets, you're tracking people. At times you have to go through business documents to know what transaction took place. There are many things I realize you need to know. So I would like to get from you, how do you get to this point where you know all this? Is it something that you get from school? Definitely not much. But how do you go about this, getting to know, almost being an all-rounded person in terms of profession?
I think it goes back to what I was saying. It's being teachable and wanting to learn, right? And this isn't something that only investigative journalists should sort of possess, like as a skill or as an attribute. I think it's something that everybody should, right? Life is not static. You never step in the same river twice, right? So goes the expression. And in the same way, you should never stop learning. Especially so for a profession whose stock in trade is information, right? If you're going to speak to millions of people or thousands of people or even just 10 people or one person, shouldn't it be the right thing to do to have the right information? And it's all out there. It's just telling yourself that, like, I was horrible at math, horrible, but I mean, if I'm called upon to go through a set of company accounts, I'll do it if I'm interested in it, right? And I think that's a lie that we're told, that, like, man, if you're not good at this, then you'll never be able to do certain things.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that's my answer.
Okay, thank you. One question about your career path right now. Have you ever regretted choosing to do investigative journalism?
More generally, the short answer is yes. The long answer is that it's more complicated than just yes. Yeah, it's more complicated. I can't just say, like, I've regretted, being an investigative journalist. The truth is, no, it's fed me, it's fed my family. I can pay my kids' school fees. I can take my wife to dinner once or twice, in a couple of weeks or a month, right? I can do things with the money that it provides, right? But it also gives me purpose. I feel like what I'm doing is important, and that somewhere along the line, someone, even one person, will remember that John Allan did A to be able to resolve B, right? So in that way, it's important to me that I'm an investigative journalist.
Wow.
In terms of regret, of course, there are times that I regret doing particular things, being in particular situations. Dusit is one of them, I think people think that it was fun being in there without a flak jacket.
Yeah, I saw you. Actually, there's some videos you took on your phone.
On my phone, yeah.
As a selfie video.
Yeah. It wasn't fun being there, and I regret that decision because it could have gone pear-shaped, man. As in, you might not have been sitting here talking to me. Yeah.
That would be so sad.
Right? But on the whole, I think I'm living my purpose, and I don't think, God makes us to do certain things if you're a believer in God. And I feel like what I'm doing is, Creation glorifies the creator, as is said, you know. And that's what I'm doing.
Wow.
Yeah.
A quick question about where you are now.
Yes. Is this the last one?
Yeah,
I need to run, and
The
getting
last
an
one.
Uber on Thika Road is hard.
okay.
Yeah.
Maybe, okay, this should be the best question, the last one. Are there things you wish you knew about media when you were a student that you now know?
Well, I think maybe things that I should have paid closer attention to. You know, Jokadi always used to tell us about the challenges that he used to face, how he hid microfiche about the story on the death of Jomo Kenyatta in a toilet at the Nation until he died, but also about the darker side of journalism. I wish I would have been told, right, or that I was more aware that our profession, just like many others, is dirty. It has people who are in there for self-interest, to advance themselves, to score, to use a platform to settle scores, and that they can also use you, wittingly or unwittingly. You know, a person can come to you with a story that is factually correct, right? But the goal behind him giving you certain information is incredibly subjective and sometimes very, 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 very unethical. Yeah? I wish I was more aware of that. And I think journalists need to have that awareness that what you're getting into is a profession that is imperfect, far from perfect, like many others. And part of your mandate should be, even in a small way, to try and fix it. Because there's so much value in what we do. Don't ever be told by a person, we ni mwanahabari tu, nini kazi yako ni ya kuandika vitu alafu tufunge nyama nazo. Yeah? The information that you give is something that is so important to people's lives. It's so important. But at the same time, if that information that you are getting, if that information that you're getting is being used subjectively, right, is being used to settle a specific score, then you are undermining the very thing that you say that you're upholding, right?
Yeah.
It's the worst kind of hypocrisy. And that's something that I wish people knew. And going into it, I pray that that's something that when I transit out of this business, that people will remember that, John Allan stood by his word. And he did things that, reflected what his views were. Yeah.
Thank you. Lastly, this is the last question, the last thing to ask you to do.
You're a true journalist, let me tell you.
Thank you. Coming from you, it's a good thing. There's a student who is giving up right now when they see the issues of corruption in the media industry that is felt in the government everywhere. They feel discouraged about doing journalism because, especially when it comes to hiring, and so it discourages some people because you keep wondering, will I get a job or do I have to bribe someone? At times to go against your Christian ethics. Now, what I want you to do is to look into the camera and give hope. And give hope to that young journalist who is doing journalism right now in campus. Please.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's this lyric in a Bob Marley song, the hotter the battle, the sweeter the victory, right? No truer words have been spoken about the challenges that we face today. Because things seem so bad, because things are bad, because it's difficult for you to get a job, for you to advance, and many times for you to even get into the room where you might get that opportunity, you think that it's impossible. But the harder the battle, the sweeter the victory. And, people say this, let me be a bit broader. People say that this really is the golden era for journalism. It really is the golden era for investigative journalism, for our profession. Because there are people who have made it their sole purpose in life to close down spaces where people can talk, to hate people who are not like them, to steal from people who have never done anything to them, and to advance themselves on the backs and the sweat of people that they don't know. So it is important that we do it today, because when you see the result, it will be that much sweeter when it's achieved. So I don't want to be too preachy, but it's true. I mean, it's true. And when you're in a profession for a certain amount of time, you'll get that perspective. There are stories that we've done years ago that are now making sense today. They didn't make sense at the time we were doing them. And that's kind of how you have to think about the challenges that you have. And this is really shitty advice to give for a person who doesn't have that opportunity, but because it's not giving you like steps. I think one step I'd take is forget about, not forget, but shelve that ambition that you have to just work in a mainstream and saying, if I must have this, this, and this. Start where you are with what you have. You have social media. Opening an account is free. You have friends. They can be your first audience. You have a platform. You have a voice. You have something to say. Say it. And let the chips fall where they may. So.
Wow. Thank you so much.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Pleasure.
Pleasure having you.
So thanks a lot for having me. It's nice to be back.
Thank you.
Asante.